the AfCFTA, but specifically looking at the trading in goods, where we have probably advantage, cooperative or competitive advantage vis-a-vis other RECs. And without further ado, I wish to welcome our CEO, Mr. John Bosco Kalisa, to give an official opening and maybe welcome our guest of honor to officiate this regional validation. Over to you, sir.
Yeah, thank you very much, Geoffrey. I want to first of all thank our guest of honor, the Deputy Director responsible for Trade, Customs and Monetary Union, our own Annette Semwemba Mutawe, for joining this validation workshop. Am I audible enough, Geoffrey?
You're clear, loud and clear, sir. You're very audible. Thank you. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. I want also to recognize and appreciate our sponsor, AfriExim Bank, for really supporting East Africa, especially EABC, with regard to sensitization, awareness creation, and also enabling us to commission this important study, where we are looking at the opportunities and the threats in the effective implementation of the CFTA, focusing on trading in goods. I think it is a very important study on our side as the EABC, as the EAC, because the study is revealing areas where the region has both comparative and competitive advantage. We all aware and appreciate that the CFTA is a game changer in the sense that it envisages opening the market, a very wider market for goods and services. We are talking about a market to the tune of 1.4 billion population, with a combined GDP currently estimated at a current level, almost 4 trillion US dollars. So it's a very huge market, and as East Africa, we already started sampling the market, and I was today looking at the Kenya trade. The Kenya trade with Africa is almost 40% of their total trade. Generally, Kenya is enjoying a trade surplus. So, and when you look at the areas where we do have comparative advantage, and I was looking at the numbers, it's around manufactured products, cereals, food-related products, food processed products, and also we look at the textile, we look at the edible oil, so and a number of products around animal and vegetable oil fats. So those are important sector in our view, and in my discussion with Deputy Secretary General, who is present here, that let's refocus on the regional value chain where the region has a comparative advantage. And I'm happy during this study, it is coming out clearly that there is a lot of potential. Generally, at the EAC level, based on the study and other previous studies that have been conducted, we've only exploited a half of our potential. So the study really highlights a number of opportunities that we need to work on with regard to deepening our trade and integration agenda, not only at the ESC level, but at the continental level. As I was looking at again the numbers, the biggest gain for the ESC, for the region, is around those value chain, again, agro-related value chain, agro processing, agro added value chain are very, very potential. That's where we have different comparative advantage. And having said that, I think we need to interrogate further in terms of the finding and look into the other areas that we've not handled or we've not adequately analyze. That's why we have this validation, so that we garner views, ideas from a number of our stakeholders present, and how best do we really shape the region in terms of promoting those regional value chain. And as I mentioned, when you look at the countries so far, out of 7 countries under guided trade initiative, 3 are coming from East Africa: Rwanda, United Republic of Tanzania, Kenya. Uganda has also joined. So we are looking forward also for other countries, Burundi, South Sudan, and DRC to join the initiative. As a bloc, we need to move together to achieve a win-win situation. We shouldn't be looking at who is losing and who is gaining, but our view is that as a region, we need to move at the same pace. So we really look forward to from this validation, your views, substantial inputs, and how best we could really support the private sector to take the advantage. And what is happening that maybe in the previous study we've done, it indicated 70% of our business have indicated that the CFTA is going to have a positive impact on their business, their income, as well as the welfare. So, and the analysis is very clear that there may be a very minimal or revenue loss implication. And again, with the support from AfCFTA Bank, we've negotiated a fund that is going to offset. And this fund has already been launched in Kigali, and we are going to start that is going to offset the revenue loss implication. And the number of simulations done again with UNECA and others indicates the revenue loss is very minimal. Generally, when you look at the numbers, it's less than 1% of revenue loss on the total revenue collection, the loss that will emanate from implementing the CFTA. So, but the challenge highlighted, and there are number that have been highlighted that both from the World Bank and this study, that we need to really work on the threats. And the threats includes NTBs and TBTs, the issues related to predictable business environment, taxes, fees, and charges we are imposing on our business. We need to also work on trade facilitation governance. You always mentioned that our border posts, our customs, our standards need to up their games. They are not doing their work. So we need to, and I discussed this with DSG, that we need to reform our trade facilitation governance architecture to be business friendly. Currently, the way our trade facilitation agents are working, they are still working in a bureaucratic kind of behavior, and we need to change that. So we need to invest a lot within our border post. We should, and in terms of raising awareness, training them, give them the appropriate tools. And this has been strongly echoed by the company that are exporting under the CFTA currently, those under guided trade. They have really expressed frustration around how the Bureau of Standards are working, customs are working. They are not up to the speed with the private sector, because the private sector is grabbing grabbing the opportunities, but our agencies are really very slow. So we need to continue to address trade costs. And as I mentioned, the border-related costs are still high at the region. Also, we need to address issues related to transport and logistics. As I mentioned, when you look at the study done by the World Bank, 2023, Connecting to Compete, ESC is doing very bad with regard to transport infrastructure, as well as the elements related to customs facilitation. Our ports have become storage facilities. So the ports need to improve their productivity in terms of fast tracking the clearance of the goods, both for exports as well as for imports. Also, we need, as a region, we need to embrace the level of digitization and ensure that our systems, our processes are digitized. Yesterday, I spoke with the team that are helping us. How do we digitize our business so that we are able to simplify and make our procedures user-friendly and business-friendly. So at the EABC, we continue to create awareness, and we are doing it again thanks to AfCFTA, and also GIZ is coming on board to continue to support us with regard to these tools. We'll be rolling out another program next week on various trade facilitation tools that we can use in terms of accessing the wider market. So we are very excited, and I want to really thank our development partners, AfCFTA, GIZ, Trademark Africa, who are working closely with the EABC and EAC to ensure that we take advantage of this wider market. So we'll continue to fast track the negotiations that are remaining, especially on digital trade, women and the youth trade, as well as look into the dispute settlement mechanism, how best we can resolve some of the emerging trade-related disputes. So again, as I conclude, I want to really thank AfCFTA for their financial resources to undertake the study. Thank the EAC Secretariat for working closely with the EABC and provide the enabling environment for trade to deliver prosperity for East Africa and the entire continent. Let me also thank Professor Seti, who has done justice to this subject and who has highlighted some of the areas where we need to really focus on, especially exploiting our comparative and competitive advantage. And thank the EABC team, the staff, especially Geoffrey, who has been behind this study, looking at the collecting all the comments that enriched this study, as well as the COM team who have shared this study. So with that, allow me to thank everyone. I thank the EABC board present, our stakeholders, and everyone, and the media fraternity who are part of this validation. And with that, I want to really invite our guest of honor, Honorable Annette Mutawe, the Deputy Secretary General, to officiate this validation. Thank you so much, DSG, and karibu sana. I hand over to you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, CEO. It's my great pleasure to be here, and I really thank EABC's invitation to the validation session. We look forward to this study outcomes to determine effective implementation of the AfCFTA. I would also like to thank all the participants that have joined this very important discussion, and I congratulate you, EABC, for completing another important piece of evidence. I would also like to thank partners, AfCFTA for their support, as well as other partners, including our valued partners, GIZ and Trademark Africa, that are supporting the EAC regional integration agenda in general. I think we all appreciate the opportunities abound through the AfCFTA that offers Africa an opportunity to grow intra-Africa trade. And the study, I think, shows the positive prospects that this market of 1.2 billion people and a combined GDP of 3.4 trillion, this is a huge, huge opportunity. But Executive Director and CEO, you've already highlighted some of the many challenges that are impeding us from accessing and benefiting from this opportunity. You've talked about infrastructure, trade facilitation challenges, but I think we also need to look at the broader issues, including, for example, the backlog on connectivity and energy, the low industrialization. Infrastructure, if I want to highlight specifically, is very, very, very important to connect the continent, and the investments in infrastructure are huge. It's therefore important to also look at the continent working together and not individual countries looking at their own infrastructure plans. But however, through the African Union, which already has these plans anyway in place, to look at mobilizing resources as well as public-private partnership in order to address the huge infrastructure gap. The AfCFTA offers huge opportunities for East Africa, and I was looking at population numbers. I looked at, for instance, the ECOWAS region, and that has about, I think, 15 countries and a population of about 339. And of that region, 220 million is the population of Nigeria, one country. And I say this because I think we now need to start to be more targeted as an EAC region, targeting particular countries within the AfCFTA. Nigeria has a population of 220 million people. Within the SADC community, South Africa has a population of 59 million people. It's the most populated. Look at North Africa, population of about 267 million people, with Egypt alone having a population of over 100 million. Following from this study, we now need to start some more deep dives so that we can target particular countries within the AfCFTA and look at value chains that we can then start to develop targeted at these populations. As you've mentioned, as CEO, we need to move away from the general discussion around the opportunity to more targeted strategies. And this study is one of those pieces of evidence that now allow us to start the targeting. This study identifies our comparative advantage, identifies the particular sectors that we could focus on. So now let's, I hope, undertake more analytical work, bring on board the public sector, bring on board sectors that are working in these value chains to start this discussion. Otherwise, with the limited industrialization, we might not be able to harness this opportunity. Imagine a scenario where we have a market opportunity that opens up, but we are let down by our inability to be able to meet that opportunity simply because we don't have sufficient production capacity to be able to deliver as will be expected. I still emphasize that limited industrialization is one of the reasons intra-Africa trade is limited. Studies have established that we need our own unique approach to industrialization, and I think the points that I've made earlier are to point us in that direction. Of course, we must also take into account that whatever industrialization strategies we undertake, we need to take into account that they must be green, and we must also be able to navigate the geopolitical divides. There's a reemergence of concerns around supply chain security, disaggregation, and constraints to policy-making space. So recognizing the importance of stimulating economic growth through the sectors that some of which you have identified, I want to confirm that the ES is implementing an industrialization policy that focuses on diversification of the manufacturing sector, higher value addition, small and medium enterprise promotion, and we aim to see the manufacturing sector contribution rise to 25% of GDP by 2032, compared to the current contribution of only 8.9%. But this will take concerted efforts of all participants from the private sector, from policy-making institutions, from the governments to invest the necessary resources, and from the civil society also to continue the advocacy necessary. Our contribution as the ES is to progressively work towards achieving the targets through promoting industrial development in strategic sectors, some of which this study helps us to identify. I've talked about promoting regional value chains. We discussed this exhaustively also last week in the discussions that we had with the private sector. The strategic use of public procurement to stimulate demand and expand the local market of the sector, local content requirements to promote local industry, promoting interventions such as MSME fairs, capacity building, and simplify schemes such as making more use of the simplified trade regimes and the FCTA's simplified regimes. It's also important to enhance public-private dialogue, and we're doing a lot of this. Further, in terms of the FCTA, we also need to continue to undertake measures to harness the opportunities, and part of what the ES is doing is to continue harmonizing our trade policies. Through the ESC regional strategy for implementation of the FCTA agreement, partner states have already identified commitments that have legal, regulatory, institutional, and capacity implications. And so, aligned to the productive capacity value chain harnessing, it's also important that at a country level, we start to undertake amendments to specific ESC regional and national legislations in order to ensure conformity with the FCTA agreements, such as on customs cooperation, trade facilitation, and defense measures, trade defense measures, among others. We also need to develop and strengthen institutional capacity at national level, continued capacity building, and sector assessments on the implications of tariff liberalization and development of appropriate strategies. I think I've mentioned part of this. On trade information and facilitation, and I think this is another point that you have raised, CEO, the ES is working on providing businesses with access to information related to trade opportunities, market access, and regulatory reforms. Last week, we agreed to continue to harness and leverage various opportunities as well as initiatives towards establishment of the trade information portal to give access to step-by-step guides on licensing, pre-clearance permits, and clearance formalities. We also encourage that partner states continue to utilize the Observatory, one of the operational instruments of the FCTA, which serves as a repository of trade information on market opportunities and market access conditions. We're also cognizant, of course, that some of these initiatives are difficult to access by MSMEs due to connectivity challenges, due to the inability to understand this information. So we hope that the private sector can also play a role in providing information and disseminating all of this information. I also want to emphasize monitoring and evaluation. We have established mechanisms for monitoring and evaluating the progress of implementing of ESC programs. But however, we also need to monitor the uptake of the FCTA instruments and the opportunities that are being harnessed by the private sector. Because if we monitor and understand where the challenges lie, then it is easier for us to be able to rectify, to learn lessons, and to continue to design the relevant interventions that will enable utilization of these mechanisms. So M&E, I think, is really, really important. We know that a number of companies have tried to access markets, and you've mentioned some of these that have taken advantage of the guided trade initiative, but we are not monitoring yet in a concrete way how this process happened, what were the challenges that they experienced, how were these challenges addressed, what did we learn from that process, and how do we disseminate those learnings so that others that want to take advantage of these opportunities can learn. So let's also, based on the evidence that this study provides, put in place that mechanisms as another intervention going forward. I would want also to mention a bit on the digitalization and e-commerce in relating to FCT opportunities. The ESC has embarked on implementation of a regional e-commerce strategy, thus embracing digital technology and e-commerce platforms. This will enable businesses to reach broader continental markets and enhance the ease of doing business within the region between ESC partner states and FCTA members. So again, another opportunity that we need to harness. In conclusion, participants, our colleagues from EABC, board members, and those present, let's continue to enhance our collaboration. I think in the last 3 or so weeks, I have had discussions with the private sector through EABC and directly with membership organizations. We've had discussions over 3 times, I think, in the last 3 weeks. And I think this is the spirit for collaboration, for continued solution discussions, for us to continue to develop plans together that will move forward our region and that will provide opportunities for us to continue to exploit the market access opportunities provided by both regional and continental trade agreements. Once again, I thank EABC for this important piece of work. I think it's only the beginning of more work that needs to be undertaken to break down this study, to identify follow-up actions, and to develop a roadmap for implementation of these actions. I thank you once again, and I look forward to our discussions this morning. I'll try to stay online as much as possible so that I can contribute and also hear from participants. Thank you once again.
Thank you very much, DSG, for vocally pointing out the opportunities that we have in this implementing this agreement, but most also importantly, pointing out what the EAC is doing in preparation for supporting the partner states to trade through the AfCFTA, pointing out on the strategy, the industrialization policy, and really emphasizing on need for targeting specific markets. So with those population numbers that you pointed out, that's really homework to the private sector, and I hope we've taken note. So without further ado, allow me to also recognize our partners, ARC, on the call. Thank you very much for joining. NEMA from different organizations, really thank you so much. The EAC Secretariat staff, Maria Angelique, thank you for making the time for this. Mr. Omsana, thank you so much. We recognize your presence and your time to this and look forward to your contributions. So without further ado, let me welcome Dr. Seth Gore, who did a lot of work and putting this work together and give us a presentation of this study. Over to you, Dr. Seth. The mic is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeffrey. Thank you, Edie. Thank you, everyone, for your presence. I'm going to make a very brief presentation. So if you give me a second, I'll try to share my screen. Geoffrey, can you confirm if you're seeing my screen? I can't see it myself from my end.
No, we can't see it. Seth, can you share it with our team? Share it with Patrick. He can or Gift. He can beam it.
All right.
If you're having a challenge on your side.
Let me try to do that.
But in the meantime, we could be talking about the key highlights of the study so that we don't waste a lot of time.
All right. So the study was intended to assess the opportunities and the threats to effective implementation of the AfCFTA agreement, and the focus was on trade in goods. The study was guided by the terms of references, which in essence became the specific objectives. And I would not bother to take you through the terms of references. I've outlined them in the slides. But I would like to inform you that this study was made up of analysis of both primary data and secondary data. The primary data was collected by questionnaires that were administered to stakeholders from the private sector. But the secondary data was obtained from a number of sources, including WDI, UN Comtrade, UNCTAD Stats, Comstats, and data from EAC Secretariat, CEMAC Secretariat, ECOWAS Secretariat, and SAC Secretariat on their schedules of tariff concessions to the AfCFTA, as well as data from Morocco and Algeria on their schedules of tariff offers to the AfCFTA. Now, we used partial equilibrium tools to process this data, to process the secondary data. And from the analytical results, we were then able to extract the opportunities and the threats to effective implementation of the AfCFTA. And so I'll highlight the findings. So we first did an overview of the trends of trade between EAC partner states and the rest of Africa on one hand, and the rest of the world on the other hand. So the highlights of this overview is that EAC partner states trade more with the rest of the world than it trades with the rest of Africa. That is the rest of Africa excluding EAC. And that this situation actually holds for both exports from EAC and imports into EAC. So the exports and imports to and from the rest of the world appear to be on an upward trajectory. So EAC is continuously exporting more to the rest of the world and importing more from the rest of the world. But EAC's imports from Africa and exports to Africa is actually on a downward trend. The other key finding is that EAC is actually a net importer from Africa. So EAC imports more from the rest of Africa than it exports. So then we try to look at the trade implications of these trends. And we found that the EAC partner states mainly export primary products to the rest of Africa, but the share of secondary products is marginally low. Now, DRC and URT are the only net exporters from EAC to the rest of Africa. In terms of the export share to the rest of Africa, Kenya, Burundi, Rwanda, and Uganda are strong on consumer goods. DRC and URT are stronger on intermediate goods. But there is a mismatch between all of EAC partner states' top export commodities relative to the comparative advantage in those commodities. So the commodities in which the EAC partner states have a comparative advantage in are not the ones that they export the most, not at the moment. Now, we also try to look at the potential sources of...
Prof.
Yes,
Can you share the presentation to Geoffrey so that we highlight it? People want to look at it.
All right,
Your PowerPoint presentation.
Give me a minute so that I do all that. Give me 1 minute. So Geoffrey, I've shared the document. Maybe you can try to share it so that we go through it together.
Since you have shared, they continue, Prof.
All right, so I'll continue with the presentation. So I was saying that we also try to assess the sources of growth for EAC partner states.
Geoffrey, scroll down the presentation, please. It's not moving.
Prof, which slide are you?
I'm on, just a minute, I'm on slide 5.
Can you see the screen?
Go up.
Prof, I'm on slide 6.
All right, so go scroll down now. Again. All right, stop there.
Stop there.
Go up.
Geoffrey, just maybe you continue from there, Prof. You continue from there. The growth of ES exports to CFTA.
So that is where we stopped. So again, we assessed the potential sources of growth for ESC exports to the AfCFTA. In this regard, we assessed three categories of exports, or three groups of exports. That is the food exports, raw materials, and then secondary products. And the findings of the study were that Rwanda had a significant export growth potential in fresh and processed food products. But Kenya, Uganda, and URT also had a positive growth in these two subsectors. Burundi and South Sudan had a negative growth potential in these subsectors. Now, in terms of export of raw materials, DRC, Rwanda, and URT had, sorry, yes. So DRC, Rwanda, and URT had significant growth potential in export of raw materials. But in terms of secondary products, Rwanda demonstrated the strongest growth potential, but DRC, URT, and Uganda also had a strong potential. Next slide, Geoffrey. Geoffrey, the next slide. Yes. So again, to try to target this analysis, we tried to analyze the implications of AfCFTA on ESC partner states' opportunities with regard to ESC's market access offer to the AfCFTA. And so what we did is that we identified the potential market for ESC in other regional blocks, in particular in ECOWAS, in CEMAC, and in SACU, and then in Algeria and Morocco. And what we did is that we looked at the schedules of tariff concession of these countries to the AfCFTA, and we looked at ESC partner states' top 40 exports for each ESC partner state and tried to map them to these markets so that we know for sure that Burundi's top 40 products are primed for market in CEMAC, in SACU, or in Morocco, because there will be preferential treatment for the top 40 exports. And so that analysis is captured properly. But just to give a highlight of some of the issues raised in that kind of analysis, is that we see, for instance, that if you are an exporter of fresh or dried avocado, then there is duty-free access in Algeria, Morocco, CEMAC, ECOWAS, and SACU. And that if you are an exporter of cane or beet sugar, then you'll have duty-free access to all those markets except in Morocco. And that if you're an exporter of coffee, for instance, there will be duty-free access in Morocco, CEMAC, ECOWAS, SACU, but there'll be no access in Morocco because Morocco has restrictions on that particular commodity. So we have done that analysis for all the 6 partner states. Next, Geoffrey. Geoffrey, next slide. Yes, and then we looked at the impact of AfCFTA's tariff liberalization on the ESC partner states. And the highlights of the analysis is that AfCFTA has an overall positive trade effect. Positive trade effect to mean that there is trade creation that is far much in excess of trade diversion following a full implementation of the AfCFTA, except for Uganda, where there is trade creation is almost the same as trade diversion. Secondly, the finding is that if there is complete tariff phase down arising from full implementation of the AfCFTA, then the price effect will be marginal in the entire EAC, but that there will be a surge of imports into EAC. And Rwanda will experience the highest surge, followed by DRC and then Uganda. But we also found that there will be a negative tariff revenue effect in all the partner states. And that negative tariff effect will impact more on DRC and Uganda. And finally, we found that there will be a general positive welfare effect in all the partner states. Next slide. Next slide, Geoffrey. Geoffrey, they are not moving. All right.
Geoffrey?
Shall I continue, Edie?
Yeah, please proceed.
Yes, I moved the slide on my side. I don't know why.
All right, so we are on the impact of NTBs on the cost of doing business. And this analysis was done on the basis of the primary data collection tools that were administered in all the partner states. And the key highlights is that the NTBs are a massive cost element in doing business, and that on average, traders spend about $1,000 to overcome NTBs, and that the male traders actually spend more on NTBs at around $2,024 per transaction, but that the female traders spend less on the NTBs, even though they are affected more by the NTBs. They spend on the region of about 380 USD per transaction. Now, the NTBs that appear to be of priority to the traders were those relating to customs and administrative procedures, those relating to technical barriers to trade, those relating to SPS measures, and specific limitations. Now, we asked if the business people were aware of the online NTBs mechanism that is available under the AfCFTA regime. And we found that the level of awareness is generally average. But the business people identified other impediments other than the NTBs that they thought were now increasing the cost of doing business, most notably transport and logistics and transit procedures. Next slide, Jeffrey. Jeffrey, next slide. All right. So we then computed. You've skipped a slide. Yes, we then computed the Interreg revealed comparative advantage, and this was done at the HS chapter level. And we generated the comparative advantage for all RECs, including those that do not have trade regimes like IGAD and CENSAD, but I want us to focus on the RECs with trade regimes. So in this analysis, we found that at the HS chapter level, COMESA was leading in food products, ECOWAS was leading in minerals, CEMAC was leading in fuels, SADC was leading in stone glass, and EAC was leading in vegetables. Next slide, Jeffrey. Next slide, Jeffrey.
Geoffrey, you are taking long to scroll the slides.
Jeffrey? Oh.
Gift, can you do it, please? If they have shared the slide to you. I see Jeffrey, I think, has a challenge with the internet.
I've not received it yet. Maybe if you can share with me.
Well, I can continue with from my end, although you not see, because we have only 3 slides left.
Yeah, continue, continue, Prof. Continue.
Yes, so now from these analytical results, we try to extract the opportunities for full implementation, or the opportunities that would arise if we fully implement the AfCFTA argument. And the key highlights of the opportunities we picked is that EAC is a net importer from Africa, and so that provides space for substitution in terms of production, and that trade between EAC and the rest of Africa is in a downward trend. Again, that provides a latent opportunity for business people to come in, and that there was a divergence between the top exports and the highest, and those exports that had the highest comparative advantage. So again, that is an important source of opportunity, and that the EAC region was overly reliant on exports of primary products, and that the EAC has a strong and resilient food sectors. So after the opportunities, we picked out the threats, and the main threat at the beyond the border barriers identified by the business people, including irregular taxes, delays caused by transit procedures, harassment and intimidation by customs and immigration officials, delays at way bridges, amongst many others. Other impediments include, other threats include the high cost of transport across the region, and that the AfCFTA tariff liberalization is bound to occasion a decline in tariff revenues, at least in the short run, and that a number of, if not all, the partner states are bound to experience a significant surge in imports from the rest of the world, and this is bound to bring intense competition, which is likely to drive weaker enterprises within the region out of business, unless, of course, they upscale the efficiency levels. And finally, we put up some recommendations. Just to pick a few of them. Strategic investment in import substitution and export promotion, intensive investment in manufacturing sector, establishment of shared lab facilities in strategic locations across the region to facilitate SPS and TBT measures so that the inconvenience to small traders in particular is reduced, and that there's need to facilitate cooperation in the areas of standards, technical regulation, conformity assessment, accreditation and metrology, and there's need to promote mutual recognition across the region. And finally, that all the partner states need to harmonize or need to adopt all the harmonized EAC standards to facilitate trade in the region. So that is the summary of the study. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Prof. And apologies for the network hitches and delays. I think probably we could receive feedback or questions on the presentation. I understand this was just a brief presentation of the reports. If you have any questions or clarifications or inputs, contributions, you're welcome. And we encourage to interact with the chat in case you really want to ask us from the raise through the chat. Please use the chat box provided on the platform. The CEO, please, I see your hand. Please go ahead. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Prof. Thank you for that precise, concise presentation, especially on key findings. Maybe mine is not a question, it's just a comment in terms of interrogating your numbers, because we've been also looking internally with the numbers in terms of the trend analysis, ESC trading with the Africa. And as I mentioned in my remarks, yesterday, I looked at the report released by the Central Bank of Kenya and even other central banks, indicating that our ESC is on the growing trend with regard to our trading with Africa. Generally, based on current, looking at the moving average, it shows that the trend has been growing in terms of ESC export to Africa. In the year 2022, the percentage increase was at 27%. And this cuts across a number of countries: Kenya, Tanzania, Uganda. Their export, generally, they are enjoying export surplus to the rest of Africa. So my view is that you need to interrogate further your data, get the updated data. I know you use these simulation tools. Some they use outdated data, so you need to have current data in your report. Otherwise, it doesn't paint a positive picture, because Kenya report indicates 40%. Kenya exports is a surplus exporter to Africa, the rest of Africa. And when you look at the export, it is again driven by food, by processed food, including wheat and other products. The same applies to Uganda. I was also looking at the number from the central bank, Uganda Central Bank. Uganda is enjoying a surplus in agricultural products across the entire Africa. So we need to really move forward into, again, disaggregate the data other than using the, I think my team shared with you, instead of using the chapters, going to the details with regard to products. I agree with you. We looked at also the warfare implication. CFTA generates a positive warfare to the entire ESC. I think also you need to look into the job creation element, where even in your report, I think you mentioned about if we address those NTBs, we are able to generate around 2 million jobs being created through various regional value chain. And if we engage our policymaker, they want to look at the numbers in terms of job creation, in terms of contribution to growth, in terms of also those value chain that really the region has both comparative and competitive advantage. And also on the tariff, again, looking at the tariff simulation, I looked at the tariff simulation conducted and using the same tools, economic tools done by UNECA. It indicates generally there is a minimal tariff losses, very minimal. And I was looking at my numbers. Generally, the biggest loss is it is not Rwanda, it's not Uganda, it's Tanzania. And looking at the simulation, Uganda will lose only 0.6, Kenya 0.6, Rwanda 0.3. The biggest loser would be Tanzania 1.3. And in the simulation indicated it's just minimal revenue loss, which can be offset by, again, our export capabilities, our ability to export in the wider region. So in my view, my recommendation, Seth and your team, they look into the data using even the current data from the Bureau of Statistics, Central Bank, and EAC. I'm happy EAC team are here, Charles and others will give you some of the current data in terms of ensuring that there is a kind of coherence in terms of the data that is being used in the report. Otherwise, overall, I really appreciate the issue of NTBs. We've been talking about it with DSG. Customs related, again, number of studies have indicated our customs agents are not working. The issues of SPS measures, the issues of transport and logistics, the costs are very high, exorbitantly very high. We cannot be competitive. And we did a study on transport and logistics. Our region is most expensive region in among REX with regard to transport and logistics. So, and as I mentioned, the issue comes from the port, the bribes you mentioned, and also our border posts are not working. So we need to, and I'm happy DSG will be visiting borders next week or the first week of April. He need to convey the message to the stakeholders at the border, because that's where the avenues for corruption and mismanagement are happening. So with that, I think I want to appreciate you, Prof, and allow others to ask questions. Sana. Comments, questions to anyone who has a question, clarification, they could raise their hands. I see Anasia Mareko. Mareko, over to you.
I see a hand from.
Can my team unlock people? They are blocking Amonish and Gift.
Anasia,
Can you please
Anasia,
allow people?
Yeah, Anasia has the permission to use the mic, so she can just unmute herself and go. Her mic is open, but she's not speaking.
If he's not speaking, can you Abdi raised also the hand. There is Abdi, there is George. There are a number who are raising hands. Can you open the mic for everyone?
Anasia, can you hear us and can you open the mic? No, unfortunately, we can't hear you, Anasia. Oh, God. Mr. Abdi? Oh, yeah, we can hear you now, Anasia. Please go ahead.
Yeah, I'm just, I'm very glad to be part of this validation meeting for the study. And I just want to know if Prof could add on how or which commodities, like as a region EAC, can collaboratively explore together and benefit from the trade within the continent. And which commodities, like I'm from Tanzania, and I wish to know which are the commodities of highly value addition that can be, updated, and then that the country can benefit in industrialization and export them within the Africa. Thank you.
Thank you, Anasia. Mr. Andrew Egala, I see your microphone open. I don't know whether you want to ask.
Yes.
Thank
you very much for the invitation to this meeting. Thanks, Prof, for the elaborative study. Now, I have two issues on what you're talking about. First of all, how do we enhance already the existing agreements, which are normally not adhered to, which are even hindering businesses among ourselves in the ESC? The second issue is we have the Common African Agro-Packs initiative, which is supposed to boost acceleration and agro-international. I mean, can it also be embraced so that now this one can be help East Africa to send out products which are already processed? And how can this two be binded together so that we can increase our competitiveness and also effectiveness? Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Andrew. Maybe we allow Prof to respond to those questions from the CEO, from Anisha and Andrew. Then we'll take another round. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeffrey, and thank you, Andrew, Maleko, and of course the ED. I think the EDs were rather comments, but I'd like to point out something about data, which brings these disparities. Since we were doing a comparative study, we were keen on ensuring that we obtain data for each country. But the sources of data we use, like the UN Comtrade, they are data that countries self-report. So sometimes countries report late. So there will be a divergence between what the countries report and what obtains at the central bank. So as a difference of 1 year can actually, bring these disparities. For instance, in our analysis on the SMART model, we used data for 2020 because Uganda did not have data for 2022. And so I guess if someone used data for 2022, the findings would be different, but the trend would be the same. So we'll try to see if we can obtain uniformly, because sometimes you can go to central bank, you obtain data for Kenya, but you don't obtain for the other countries. And therefore, you can't run a comparative study. So we'll try to see what we can do about that, ED. Now, Maleko, I think you're asking very pertinent questions. Which commodities can we collaboratively explore as a region? So I think this question can now be answered on the basis of the issues or the findings of this study. So at the moment, we cannot really answer it, but I think it's a genuine and genuinely important question. What are the commodities of high value addition? Again, we didn't explore this at a regional level. We only explored it at a country level. And so on the basis of this study, we can now move to actually address the issues that are being raised by Maleko. But now, one thing that we did with this study, the reason why we tried to do some analysis at the HS chapter level was that we were actually keen on trying to pick out opportunities for value chain integration in Africa. And that is not possible to get if you look at, if you do analysis at the tariff line level. And so our key finding is actually that there are very many, all the partner states are huge in exporting intermediate goods, which is the basis for value chain integration. So I think, Maleko, thank you for your questions. They can now be addressed on the basis of these findings. Now, Andrew, on how we enhance existing agreements that are not being adhered to. I think this is a question that can be addressed at the political level, because now countries have sovereignty around implementation of commitments under the agreement. And so if one country is of the opinion that it's not ready to, implement certain commitments, there's not much that can be done unless there's some, some decision made at the higher levels. For instance, now, a number of countries are not implementing certain commitments that are supposed to support easy movement of goods across the region. So I think from our end, we can make a suggestion, but in terms of actual implementation, this is political. On the initiative to support export of agricultural commodities, this is a very good idea, Andrew, but I also think there are lots of initiatives of such nature that are being exploited by different business groupings across the region. And maybe what we can do is to try to encourage the business people to join such initiatives for purposes of enhancing the quality of exports out of Africa, which ultimately is good for all of us, even though it's done by the private sector. Thank you.
I think I saw a hand from Mr. Abdi. Is it a Mr. or Miss?
And also
Abdi.
Liz also.
And
Liz
Liz.
raised the hand.
Okay, Liz, please go ahead if Abdi is unable to unmute. Liz, are you able to unmute?
There is Dennis. Dennis can unmute himself, Geoffrey, if others cannot. Dennis.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. We can hear you.
Thank you for the presentation, Professor. My question is with regard to how the study determined the comparative advantages that the various regions had in terms of their products. And I'm specifically focusing on the non-primary products, the manufactured goods in those regions that had a comparative advantage in the manufactured goods. Did the study actually consider the requirements of the rules of origin under the Continental Free Trade Agreement? Because it could be a situation where those countries in those regions, or they're exporting goods, but under the current, their primary market at this point, which is might be a country where they might have different arrangements, or the rules of origin might not be consistent, or might give them more flexibility than what the tolerance levels under the Continental Free Trade Area allows, the 15% tolerance. So it might mean that it might appear as a comparative advantage if you're looking at them now in their export capacity, but when we apply it under the Continental Free Trade Area, they might not be able to satisfy or meet the rules of origin requirement. So that was my question.
Thank you, Dennis. Was that Dennis?
Yes, it is Dennis. Yeah. Go ahead, Prof.
Yes, thank you, Dennis. That's a very good question. So in computing the revealed comparative advantage, we are not looking at the export destination market. We are looking at the source. And so once we establish that you have the right endowment, the right set of skills compared to other countries in Africa, market access then becomes a second consideration. So the estimation of the revealed comparative advantage does not take care of the market access requirements. So I actually want to agree with you that once we determine that a certain country has comparative advantage in a certain product, then we need to consider the market access requirements. And that is what we try to do towards the end of the analysis, by trying to look at the various markets and the possibility of access of the top commodities. So what we did is that we picked out top 40 exports for each country which have revealed comparative advantage, and then tried to see to what extent they can access the various markets. So in a way, that tries to answer part of the question you're asking. Part of the question you're asking because we have not considered the rules of origin in that analysis. We have just considered the market access requirements in terms of tariff preferences. So Maybe this is something that we can pick up for future work. Thank you.
Prof, maybe if I could pull from the chat, there are various comments and a few questions. Hello?
I can
someone,
Jeffrey.
yes, Alice Angwech, how true is the finding that the common trading products from Uganda is mostly vegetables? Which year of trade and trend? That is a question from Alice Angwech. Then this, I think initially this one was asked, and it's just a comment. Thank you, Prof, for the response. We need now to collaboratively work on these areas. We concentrate more on to feed Europe, China, etc., while the region is food insecure and the effort to be made less cumbersome. That she suggests. Then Ruth Ndegwa, good afternoon. Thank you for sharing the findings of this study. The report refers to a positive influx of communities from other parts of Africa into the EAC as a challenge. I think this should be seen more from an opportunity perspective, in addition to cooperative advantage in certain communities like petroleum products, etc. This is the spirit behind this initiative, and hopefully value chain integration should be of a key focus. Maybe those mostly are comments. Maybe just a question from Alice. I don't know whether that can be answered, Prof.
Yeah, thank you, Jeffrey. From Alice, she's asking how true the finding on Uganda's.
There is Jeffrey. Abdi is still raising his hand. Can you give? Can I allow him?
Okay. Abdi, over to you. Probably Abdi has an issue with connecting to the microphone. Maybe you could respond to the question from Alice. Thank you.
Yeah, so Alice was asking how true the finding is. So again, what I'd like to say is that this study used global databases. But like I said, the global databases are based on self-reported data from countries. And so what countries report is not necessarily up to date. If you go to the sources, you find that, say, only one country has reported data for 2023, the others have not. So to the extent that Uganda reported this information to WTO, and that is where the UN conference obtains the data. That is the true position as per that time. If you look at the situation currently, it may be different because the data was reported maybe in 2022. So if you did an analysis with 2023 data, the findings would be different. But a lot of times the trends would be the same. The findings would be different in terms of the numbers, but the trends would be the same. Now for us, the influx or the surge of imports is a challenge. I want to agree with you. It's not a challenge. It's an opportunity because it means that the East African community businesses will have to compete. So that means upscaling efficiency, which is good for sustaining the businesses, but also good in terms of welfare enhancement to society. So if you read through the report, in the opportunities, you find that this is actually an opportunity. So we are actually in agreement. Thank you.
Yes, Christine John. I think we have a hand from Christine John. Christine? Looks like maybe participants have an issue to connect on the microphone. ED, would you want to guide whether we could close or?
Yeah, if there are no more questions, I think we. I don't see any other hand. Any other hand? Nafta, you want to raise your question? No, I think Geoffrey, we can close. There are very valid questions and comments, which Prof. Perhaps since everyone has shared their contact details, they can interrogate further with the study, then provide written comments to Prof. So I think I would really appreciate everyone for this engagement and thank the Prof for the good work he has done. And I think a number of comments are very valid, substantial to improve the report. So what we are going to do at the ABC is to share across. For those who have shared the emails, we are going to share the report. Give us your written comments with a view to enrich this important report. I think what has come out clearly, Prof, I think interrogate further the numbers, look at the disaggregate the value chain, the value chain that the region has the revealed comparative advantage. Look at the current data from Bureau of Statistics, National Bank of Rwanda, and others where they have updated information. But overall, I think the report, we've officially received the report, and I want again to thank DSG, but also take into account the comment on the low level of industrialization. What are those drivers of industrialization and the regional value chain? And also on the costs, what are the cost drivers, trade costs that are driving, that are making EAC less competitive within various regional communities. And I think we need also, Prof, you need to look into the lakes. You highlighted the lakes where we have a market, so where we can have a market access. And I think Dennis raised an important issue. Look at may need to look at the market access requirements. Perhaps it's not part of this study, but maybe for the future study we're going to do, we look at the market access requirements for the products the ESA has demonstrated very comparative advantage. So I think overall, I really want to thank everyone who participated in this validation. And I think we are happy to endorse the study with comments integrated, and I will be receiving, maybe we're giving Prof 1 week to incorporate more comments and give us a final product. Thank you very much. I hand over to you again, Geoffrey.
Thank you so much, CEO, for those closing remarks. And indeed, we endorse the study. So probably in a week's time, Prof, we expect the final report. Then we circulate to our stakeholders and partners for their consideration. So on my own behalf, thank you so much for the participation. Good turnout we had today. And for those that have provided their email addresses, I'll right away share the report, and you can go through it. And if you have any written comments, please share them through my email. Then I'll relay them to the consultant. Otherwise, I thank you very much for your participation and your engagement, and I look forward to engaging with you further. And thank you so much. Have a great day and have a great weekend ahead. Thank you.